truth is, there are a lot of very weird, strange things coming out of both the Republican nominee and the vice presidential nominee on the Republican side. I mean, there's this consistent kind of talk about Donald Trump's fear of sharks. I'm not sure why that's relevant to becoming president of the United States. There's the talk about couches and dolphins on the vice presidential candidate's case.
Yeah, well, we've known for a long time that he's trying to pave the way to the White House, and I think he senses a real opportunity, and so he is going to do what he needs to do to make that happen, I think.
Is Pritzker being asked to be the vice presidential nominee? A question that we've been delving into as the governor continues to be asked that question time and again, every time he's in front of members of the media. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out with us each and every weekday morning. Wake up with us around 8 o'clock. We go live at America's Talking Network with the Center Square, and you can get the Center Square's newsletter by going to thecentersquare.com. But you can also get the podcast each and every weekday morning. Just search Illinois in Focus Daily. So the governor's been asked time and again since President Joe Biden announced that he was not going to run for re-election and ultimately endorsed Kamala Harris to be the vice president, the presidential nominee. Now, that all has to be confirmed at the Democratic National Convention coming up in Chicago next month. 20 some odd days away here. The Center Square will be on the ground in Chicago, so be looking out for that. But the governor asked time and again, not just by national media. For instance, last week he was asked by MSNBC if he'd received vetting materials. He explicitly said no, and then the following day he was asked what kind of conversations he's having with the vice president, looking at possibly being a running mate if she is the Democrat nominee for president. And Pritzker is simply saying that he's not going to divulge private conversations other than to say that he is all in for Harris. So again, yesterday he was asked at an unrelated event about, is he being vetted to be the next VP candidate?
This may be the 73rd time that you and your colleagues have asked this question. I'm not going to talk about those conversations, but I've had many conversations and continue to, as I have for weeks and weeks and weeks when Joe Biden was going to be our nominee, and now with Kamala Harris as our likely nominee. I talk to the campaign regularly because I want to do everything I can to make sure that Kamala Harris wins and that Donald Trump does not. I'm sorry, would I tell you? I think I've been very transparent about almost everything about being governor and everything that's occurred. And in this case, all I can say is that my guess is over the next 10 or 14 days, we'll all know who the vice presidential nominee is.
So next 10 or 14 days, we could see who Harris is going to pick to be the VP. But there's been this interesting theme that Democrats across the country have been using, and that's characterizing Republicans as, quote, weird. And all the memes that are out there fascinating about this, with Democrats, showing pictures of Stephen Miller or Roger Stone and saying, oh, they're weird. And then Republicans counter with, pictures of the former Biden administration's nuclear waste handler who ended up, being a cross-dresser who stole women's luggage from airports, or, an assistant press secretary at the White House, or a whole, people showing up, men who have beards wearing dresses. It's interesting to see, just stepping back as an observer, how this line of talk calling Republicans weird, but then Republicans countering saying that, Republicans are, quote, weird, and then showing images of who they say are weird. But the governor seems to have gotten some kind of, indication that that's the term that they're using.
Well, I've listened to it. I've actually talked about it yesterday. The truth is, there are a lot of very weird, strange things coming out of both the Republican nominee and the vice presidential nominee on the Republican side. I mean, there's this consistent kind of talk about Donald Trump's fear of sharks. I'm not sure why that's relevant to becoming president of the United States. There's the talk about couches and dolphins on the vice presidential candidate's case. And it's just, I don't understand. We should be talking about the issues that are important to working families across the United States. That's what Kamala Harris is talking about. That's what all of us ought to be focused on.
So the issues we'll talk about here in a moment, but State Representative Brad Halbrook, when I chatted with him yesterday, speculated that it's been known for a while Pritzker's vying for higher office.
Yeah, well, we've known for a long time that he's trying to pave the way to the White House, and I think he senses a real opportunity, and so he is going to do what he needs to do to make that happen, I think.
And Halbrook also talking about the issues, things that he's heard. Of course, some of the major points are abortion and helping working class families. The Democrats are heralding, and Republicans, Trump, the Republican nominee, saying that the border's out of control, inflation's out of control, the economy's out of control, international policy's out of control, all under the Biden-Harris administration. But to some of these issues and the backs and forth there, here's Halbrook.
Well, I don't think they're winning issues, but I mean, I think it's predictable, and I think it's to be expected from a Democrat leader, especially the governor of the sixth largest state of the nation. I mean, I think the rhetoric is just completely hypocritical. He talks about these things about protecting the rights of women while denying the rights of the unborn to have an opportunity at life. He talks about protecting the rights of workers and working families, and all the while he's giving out hundreds of millions of dollars to our foreign adversaries that we now hear in a recent hearing Friday in Michigan over the Goshen battery plant that they have direct connects to slave labor. So I think it's just completely hypocritical when he talks about these issues, and hopefully Illinoisans and Americans are paying attention to what's going on here and will read through his crazy rhetoric.
And also, you've got the questions about just the ongoing taxpayer cost of all of this. We've talked about the taxpayer costs to the migrant crisis, not just the humanitarian costs, which are dreadful, but the taxpayer costs, which are climbing more and more and more because of the Biden-Harris administration's Boris policy. But what about Pritzker? What would it be like if he, from Illinois, was to be the running mate for Kamala Harris?
We see his agenda as a far left Marxist agenda. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about the border. They continue to tax, borrow, and spend Illinoisans. So I think we'll just see that all that ramped up on steroids if he was to become the second most powerful person in the United States as a vice president. I'm not really sure that Illinoisans can afford much more J.B. Pritzker. I'm pretty sure that America can't afford any more of the Democrat policies that, again, hundreds of thousands, millions of illegal immigrants are pouring across the border, the illegal drugs, the sex trafficking. This is not going to go. It's not going well, and it's not going to go well for America.
So the governor was at two different events yesterday. We saw a little bit of the morning event, which we'll talk about in another segment, of him signing a birth equity law. He was at an afternoon event up in Chicago talking about Medicaid expansion. But again, in the Q&A, he was asked, what was it, maybe now for the 76th time, if he's being vetted to be the Democrats' vice presidential candidate.
I'll correct your timeline. I think I said no on Tuesday morning. That I had not received vetting documents. And then subsequently I was asked the question, just so you can go back and look at your records. And what I've said repeatedly since then is that, I'm not going to talk about the conversations that I've had with the vice president or with her campaign, other than to say that I have committed myself to Kamala Harris, that I will go out and work my heart out for her to win this election, because we cannot have Donald Trump as president of the United States.
So obviously, the politics there, saying that Trump should not be president of the United States, but are the politics changing, especially with the migrant crisis impacting minority communities in a city like Chicago? Halbrook, being from downstate Illinois, has talked to people up in Chicago as well, also visiting the southern U.S. border, and he says that there could be a sea change here.
Right. I think there is a definite outcry and outrage, and rightfully so, of different voting blocks and different minorities in these cities. We saw the outcry at the Chicago City Council meetings over the last several months, and it continues. They know what's going on, and they know that the city can't handle the pressure from these additional residents. And to think that maybe there's going to be another, I don't care what number you put with it, but if there's another 20 or 25,000 or 30,000 citizens flow into the city over the next few weeks, I just think that it's going to be outrageous if this continues to happen.
A lot more to come on all of this. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. America's Talking Network with the Center Square and Illinois in Focus Daily. Thank you for the applause there. I'm Greg Bishop. Be sure to follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air. And you can stay updated with what's going on at thecentersquare.com.